Season 3 of the hit animated superhero series Invincible is just around the corner, and the massive fan base will be happy to know that you won't have to wait months on end for all the episodes this time around. But from the outside looking in, one might wonder why exactly Invincible is so popular when it kinda looks like just mostly a run-of-the-mill superhero story. Well, I have 3 reasons that I believe makes this story work, both the comics and the show, kind of talking about both here, but they might not be the most obvious picks. Either way, I believe these 3 reasons not only make this seemingly kind of just basic superhero series stand out, but are direct solutions to many problems facing superhero comics, or just at least problems that I have with a lot of them. Okay, I know I just said these points wouldn't be the most obvious, but this one kind of is, and it's the fact that Invincible just doesn't hold back. Not just the character, not just the violence in the stories, but the stories themselves told in these comic series don't adhere to some strict age rating or comics code. They tell the stories with as much violence or emotional maturity as necessary. And that's a key thing to point out, because for as mature as the story is with its violence, they also cover adult themes that most critics of comics wouldn't think would be covered in a medium like this. And it's not violence for the sake of violence, nor shocking moments just to shock readers or whatever. It's the fact that the story is free to tell itself with complete honesty that separates it from the more popular superhero characters. Let's take for instance the character Spider-Man. Despite his strength and oftentimes his anger, you aren't going to see much blood, gore, harsh language, or explicitly adult themes in a Spider-Man story, even if the story calls for it. In Marvel's eyes, it has to be censored to reach its target audience, and hey, oftentimes that's okay. We don't need a super gory Spider-Man story, but fortunately, Invincible has the freedom to not be toned down in order to tell the story that needs to be told in the most honest way possible, and it's the fact that that honesty connects with the audiences. So my point is, one of the reasons Invincible works so well and is very popular is not the fact that it's super violent, but the fact that this uncensored violence and other adult themes make for a more authentic story. My second reason as to what Invincible does right and why it works is that it has a much more stable sense of continuity than most other superhero stories. Looking at the Marvel and DC universes, they're always rebooting, reworking, introducing new timelines, universes, whatever, and it's bolstered by just how long each comics world has existed, going on for several decades of characters and stories that keep building, sometimes stories have nothing to do with one another. The point is, for new readers especially, it can be incredibly challenging to know where to start, what to read, how everything connects, and all of that. When it comes to Invincible, you just read it. That's it. There aren't a million alternate timelines, universes, although there is a story poking fun of that, which Invincible likes to do regarding superhero comics. Instead, you just read the story from start to finish, and it's 144 issues. Sure, there are spin-offs here and there, but unlike most superhero stories, Invincible just gives you the story in a rather uncomplicated format that allows new readers to jump right in and read from start to finish without any trouble, unlike a lot of more popular characters out there from, as I mentioned, Marvel and DC. Speaking of ending things at issue 144, that leads me to my third point about why Invincible works well, besides the obvious stuff about it, being a good story with good artwork, and that's the fact that the story ends. When something is successful, the natural reaction is to keep it going, to keep getting that success. But when it comes to storytelling, every story has to have a beginning, middle, and an end. The longer you keep something going, the higher the chance that it becomes bad. So for Invincible to end when the time was right, it actually did the right thing, sacrificing any more story they could have milked out of it in the short term in order to have a much better reputation in the long term. You can also see this in something like Breaking Bad, one of the most popular, critically acclaimed shows ever, which ended after only 5 seasons because that was the natural end for that story. Do you think if they kept squeezing story out of it, it would have been considered one of the best shows ever? Or do you think because they ended things on a high note when the time was right, they cemented its legacy in the long run? That's a big problem with most superhero comics. Sure, having these comics go on forever means new artists and writers get a crack at telling great stories, and that's fun. That's a good thing. But how many times is Batman gonna fight the Joker? How long will these stories go on for until the continuity falls apart, stories and characters are constantly reused, and it all becomes a mess? And the truth is, it already has for a lot of these characters. I'm not saying all ongoing comic series should end, I'm just simply saying that Invincible was in the unique position as an original standalone superhero comic series to be able to end on its own terms, which I believe ultimately helped it. So while most would agree that Invincible is a pretty good comic and TV series for its stories, characters, and art, it is pretty popular. It's gotten a lot of critical acclaim. Those reasons that I went over are why I think it works above and beyond a lot of other superhero stories that aren't Marvel or DC. I'm going to be honest with you, Invincible, it's not my favorite series or anything, but the fact that it can afford to be authentic by not holding back, that it has a much stronger sense of continuity compared to other superhero stories, ultimately avoiding a bunch of confusion and being, easily accessible to new readers, and the fact that it actually ended instead of going on forever and ever, it does make me respect the series even more. So that's why I think Invincible works. Why do you think the comic works? Besides the obvious stuff of it, just people like the story and all that stuff. So why do you like Invincible? Or maybe you don't like it. I don't know. If you're excited for season 3, let me know in the comments, and I'll see y'all next time. Goodbye.